Welcome to Taxidermy Truths, where we discuss the ins and outs of not only the taxidermy process, but the influences on the hunting community as a whole. With over 25 years in the wildlife and taxidermy industry, I host open conversations with artists, experts, and industry giants. From sustainable utilization to shipping rates, we dig into the reality of the experience after the safari and hear real stories worth remembering. Hi there, my name is Douglas Cocroft and welcome to Taxidermy Truths. Today's discussion revolves around skinning. Now, a lot has happened in the taxidermy industry over the last 25 years. But the fundamentals of taking the skin off the hunted animal have stayed exactly the same. A sharp knife, taking your time and being meticulous in your skinning still produces the best possible quality taxidermy work in the industry. If you give me a well-skinned animal that's been salted thoroughly, I can create something magnificent. If you give me the same animal, a great quality Nyala bull, hunted in the rut, its neck is thick, the skin is full of hair, it's gorgeous. If you don't skin that animal properly, it immediately puts the taxidermist on the back foot and being set up for failure. African animals have a very thin and generally straight hair follicle. Unlike the sheep or bears or goats that you'd find in other countries, our animal's thin hair makes stitching quite a task. It's an art form. So quite often, the taxidermy that gets produced in South Africa, the facial detail is, it's done well, it's pretty, it looks like the animal. The anatomy of the mannequin, that depends on the artist, but in general, it looks good. And then the international hunter turns the trophy over and they see the back stitching on an Impala. And that's where the wheels fall off. Because an Impala's hair follicle is dead straight. And as you realign the skin, the hairs twist. And you end up with this, it's almost like a mohawk that runs down the back neck of your Impala. And that's how we get judged as taxidermists in Africa. We're judged on the stitching. But if you look back, when that animal was hunted, the blade that was used to skin that animal was blunt. The animal was shot in the morning, it was skinned at lunchtime and hung from a tree. The guy skinning it only has 4 months experience, but because it's an Impala and it's a common animal, surely he can get that right. When in actual fact, one of the most difficult animals to skin is in fact an Impala, because of that dead straight hair follicle and the ability to line the skin up and flatten the hair at that point where the skin gets rejoined. So skinning is a critical part of creating beautiful taxidermy. It reminds me, I was in a lodge many years ago, and one of the most incredible things in Africa and in the hunting industry as a whole is that we gather around a fire. We call it the African cinema. You sit around a fire, you watch the flames flicker, and you tell stories of the hunt. It's one of the things that makes the hunting industry such a charming, special industry, such a wonderful experience. And while sitting around a fire with a whole lot of PHs and a couple of folks who'd come in to hunt, a gentleman walked in and said he'd had a tremendously successful day hunting steenbuck. Now, steenbuck can be tricky to shoot because you've got to find them. They're small, they move quickly. And there was a general murmur of laughter. And when I dug a little deeper, I saw pictures of what a 7mm round did to that steenbuck. Anyone who knows their ballistics will understand it's not pretty. And the comment was, don't worry, I've got a good taxidermist. He'll fix that. I still laugh about this because, unfortunately, with damage from bullets and poor skinning, there's only so much a taxidermist can do to recreate that perfect, beautiful animal. So, point number 1, make sure that they're sharp knives, and each animal needs to be skinned carefully, with planning as to what the hunter wants done with that trophy at the end of the safari. So, while you shoot your nyala, you bring it back, and the standard comment, shoulder mount and backskin. What kind of shoulder mount? Is it a wall pedestal or a standard shoulder mount? What about a pedestal mount? Has the hunter realized that a nyala has the most incredible coloration in their front legs? So shouldn't it have been a half mount? Or it's so beautiful and the hunt was so spectacular. What about a full mount? So without prior planning, and then the necessary instructions to the skinner, and then skinning it correctly, how can you get the outcome that you're dreaming of for this once-in-a-lifetime animal? So the planning is important. Advice I would give a professional hunter, an outfitter, or landowner is speak to your clients before they pull the trigger, understanding what their needs are. Also remember, this is our field of expertise. Offer information and say, look, I know you're thinking of a shoulder mount, but perhaps we should skin it for a full mount in case you change your mind. Because invariably, we all change our minds. So with an animal like a nyala, I've seen it many times. They shoot it, they skin it for a cape, and they say, I wish I had full mounted this animal. It's so beautiful. But once the skinning is done, you have to deal with the scars, and it becomes difficult. So let's run through a couple of the options of mounting and then talk about the skinning of each. We start with the basics. A shoulder mount. So the idea is to skin the shoulder mount from the midriff towards the head. That gives you a bit more skin to wrap around the back of the mount so that you don't stretch the skin onto the mannequin. When you stretch that skin, that's what causes drumming. And we want to make sure that the animal's skin adheres to the mannequin to create a long living trophy, something that's going to be on your wall for years to come. The minute that there's drumming and the skin comes away from the mannequin, it allows for splitting of the skin and deterioration of the trophy. So as rule of thumb for a shoulder mount, skin it in the middle of the belly. I have had folks turn on and say, yes, but then that takes away from my back skin. You're going to lose maybe 2 inches. It's not much. Skinning down the neck, make sure the skinner skins straight down the neck. There is a Y cut from the back of the horns and then one clean line down the middle of the neck at the back, not the front through the lip. Please, we've seen that too. It's not pleasant. So no matter what shoulder mount you're dealing with, aside from pigs and cats, make sure that that Y cut is straight and that the line of cut down the middle of the back is straight. When it comes to tanning, we're able to flesh it properly. And when it comes to stitching it onto the mannequin, it fits back together better. And that means the hair will lie flat. So at the end of the day, it's about slowing down marginally to ensure quality in the long run. So let's say there's a left turn or a right turn or a sneak or a semi-sneak involved, and this is a pose you would like. For a shoulder mount, the points on the shoulders are equidistant from the wall. So it really doesn't mean you need to skin it any differently, whether it's a left turn, right turn, straight, upright, or sneak. Where it does change is where you move into the realm of wall pedestal and pedestal mount. With a wall pedestal, we show off either the left or right shoulder, and the mount almost turns out of the wall. This works incredibly well for things like blue wildebeest, where there's a shadow stripe, zebra, nyala. Think of an Aoudad or Barbary sheep with that beautiful long mane. You want to turn it slightly so you can see the flow of the hair. It gives the mount movement. I remember when wall pedestals first came into the trend, it was kind of a swear word, because the purists said, why would you want to change a classic shoulder mount? But over time, it's evolved. And there are now wall pedestals of all different formats. There's a long shoulder and a short shoulder and a carve out at the back. There are even habitats that sit underneath the pedestal mounts on the wall, adding value to a beautiful piece of art. With a wall pedestal or a pedestal mount, it's advisable to skin about 2 to 4 inches further back. Give the taxidermist the canvas that they need to create something that the skin fits and it looks beautiful. The last thing we want to do is try and stretch over that skin. Here's a vivid picture for you to put through your heads. That t-shirt that you look at on the shelf and you think, wow, that's a cool t-shirt. And you try it on and the sleeves are too tight and the neck is choking you a little bit too short. Maybe you should go for a size up. Same thing with the taxidermy skin. Give the taxidermist enough skin to work with. And you don't sacrifice much of your backskin. 2 to 3 inches is not much. Given that the edges of the backskin in the tanning, you often don't use that far edge. And the primary product is still that animal on the wall. So you've got a shoulder mount, you've got a wall pedestal, you've got a pedestal mount which sits on a freestanding pedestal. Remember something with a pedestal mount. It's at eye level and the audience walks around the piece, which means it's more important than ever to make sure that the line of cut down the back of the neck is straight and meticulous, because you will see the scarring. And if you don't cut straight, you'll end up with jagged lines across the back neck of the trophy. And in a pedestal, it stands out like a sore thumb. Shoulder mount, wall pedestal, pedestal. Let's talk about a half mount. So, a half mount is exactly that. Half the animal. In order to get the horns out of the skin and the skull out the skin, you do the Y cut from behind the horns and a straight line cut down the back of the neck in much the same way as a shoulder mount. You would then skin underneath the arms, or should I say underneath the legs, up into the brisket, and then remove that portion as a full mount. My advice, whether you want a half mount, a full mount, a 3D mount, I would tell the PH and skinner to skin those beautiful animals like the nyala as a full mount from the first moment. Remember, from a full mount, we can go back to a half mount. You can go to a wall pedestal, you can go to a pedestal, and you can go to a shoulder mount. You can't do that the other way around. So full mount caping is singularly your safest option. For a half mount, we include the front legs. So very popular on an Aoudad, Barbary sheep. Because of the chaps and the long hair, you want to show off that front section. Sometimes a skin gets damaged and you had planned on a full mount, but all you're left with is the front half. It might be because of having to remove that animal out of a really rough piece of terrain and it damages the skin by accident. So a half mount is a great option to show off the front beauty of the animal, the legs, the coloring, the elegance of the animal. That often comes out in seeing how the hooves and how the body moves. Naturally, the next one being a full mount. Everybody knows what the full body mount looks like. It's the whole deal. It's the entire animal. But much like a pedestal mount, it's at eye level. And because it's at eye level, It will be scrutinized, and the quality will be scrutinized. A shoulder mount is, I just got a shoulder mount. But a full mount, it costs you more. It's more of a challenge to the artist, and it's a place where more error can come in. Skin a full mount well, and that takes away that element where the hair knots. It forms a mohawk. It leaves a scar. So again, focusing on the clean cut really helps the artist to create beautiful work. I mentioned 3D mounts. It's what they've been termed. And at first, I have to admit, I was a bit of a skeptic, but they've taken off. And I know I've done numerous 3D mounts, from buffaloes to zebra, giraffe, wildebeest, bushbuck. And there is a place for them. A 3D mount doesn't stick out too far from the wall. Imagine taking a shield and shaping the body into the shield with the head coming out of the shield, the mount. Hard to explain, but I'm sure everybody's seen them. If you haven't, go and take a look at various websites, and you'll see the three-dimensional mounts, the 3D taxidermy mount. It's an interesting piece, and it can be quite elegant in the right setting. To skin for a 3D mount, you skin as a full mount. So as you would skin to do a full mount animal, that is the best possible cut to skin for a 3D mount. So again, if you're undecided, skinning for a full mount means you can go shoulder mount, wall pedestal, pedestal, full mount, half mount, and 3D mount. So these are the principal mounts that you can consider. As extra product, you also have the backskin, and if you're not going to be doing a shoulder mount, you can do a shield mount and a flat skin. Flat skin is exactly that. It's a flat skin. It does not include the head. So imagine the skin flat with the head being cut off. Backskin is exactly that. It's the back portion of the skin that remains after you've caped out the front. The difference between a flat skin and a rug mount. So in the US, quite often you have bears in a rug mount. South Africa, we do a lot of leopards and lion in a rug mount. It's a flat skin where the head is mounted and is three-dimensional. To turn a rug mount into a flat skin is difficult because the head is the most intricate part of the skin, and it's round, it has dimension. It has nostrils, ears with cartilage, eyes with fat. To flatten that out and make it look elegant and neat is very difficult. I would always suggest, and I suggest it quite assertively, I would suggest that the head is removed, because I would rather give you a product that is clean and precise than have to explain why the cartilage ears have twisted and it doesn't look like the animal that you hunted. So just to clarify, rug mount, when you skin for a rug mount and the head is in, you need to remove the head out of the skin, and you would have a cut that goes down the belly. It opens the skin up flat, but still leaves a three-dimensional head. A flat skin, the head can come off. You can cut off just below the chin, take the head one side, and you're left with a beautiful flat skin. So these are some of the ways that you can mount an animal if you plan correctly. Tips I give again: a full mount skin, you can always go back to a half mount, pedestal, wall pedestal, and shoulder mount. It's hard to go from a shoulder mount to a full mount. Planning your taxidermy before your hunt will give you a much better outcome. Understanding how these animals are skinned and how they should be salted will guarantee the artist of a better canvas. Please keep your eyes out for the next series we have on skinning of various animals for various mounts. There will be diagrams available so that you have a reference that when you're in the field, you can show the skinner and the pH. You can show the client and say, that's how we're going to skin your animal. It leaves less room for error. And at the end of the day, it guarantees you a much better product and some incredible memories that are sitting on your wall. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to doing some incredible work over the coming months. As we approach the end of the year, I can only reflect back on what has been a remarkable time in the taxidermy industry in South Africa. Never before has the South African hunting industry had as many hunters come through the front doors. Hunting is well, and with a positive outlook into 2025, I believe the next year can only get better. Thank you.